Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktivinoda, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktivinoda. Nitai Gaur, Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaur. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Giri Govardhan ki, Shri Shri Nitai Gaur Hari ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, the divine appearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamulam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Sha. Everybody, Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusutta Deve Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpadarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam, Pangam langayate girim, Yat kripa tamaham vande, Shri Guru Dinatarinam. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to speak about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur on his appearance day. We need all the mercy we can get. So it's a privilege and honor to be able to say something. Not that we are so qualified to speak about such great devotees, but by speaking about them, our consciousness also becomes purified, which I'm hoping for. And the speaking about the Sudha Bhakata, the pure devotees of the Lord, is pleasing to Krishna, and it's also non-different from the platform of Brahman, not impersonal, but meaning on the spiritual platform. Krishna and his devotees, pure devotees, are non-different, so the Leela itself is spiritual. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, he re-established the teachings of Krishna that had become lost over time, given that it was almost 4,500 years after Krishna had left. Then all the teachings had faded into oblivion, they'd become lost, they'd become misrepresented. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, at least externally, to reinvigorate and re-establish the teachings of Krishna. We know there are more esoteric reasons for his appearance, but that's not the discussion here today. So when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, 1486, and performed his pastimes for 48 years, and then left the planet, and from him, the Chaitanya tree, so many branches of Gaudiya Vaishnavism expanded. From him, from Nityananda, Advaita Acharya, so many branches. But then again, given the nature of Kali Yuga, which is a dark period which swallows everything, the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also became lost. And in fact, they became misrepresented very grossly by so-called followers who took the esoteric aspects of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's love for Srimati Radharani and misrepresented it on the gross platform, on the bodily platform, and tried to express that this love that is deep and internal, they made it external and started to display that in the way they dressed like Krishna and had relationships externally with, immoral relationships and so on, like that. At the same time, during that period, just soon after that, the British occupied India. So it's important to get a context of the situation prior to Bhaktivinoda Thakur appearing. So this wonderful book, a biography of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, written by Rupa Vilas, probably disciple of Srila Prabhupada, edited by Karnamrita Das Adhikari. And it's in a series called The Lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. So this is one of the volumes there. It's a very nice book, and the very well written, but also seems to keep the language register of the type of maybe archaic English that existed during that British period, right? A kind of formal English, a more grandiose type of English that was there. So what we'll do is read parts of it and then explain those parts there. Please repeat. Namo Bhaktivinodaya Satchidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate. The translation, and you can repeat also. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Satchidananda Bhaktivinod, who is the transcendental energy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is a strict follower of the Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa. So one of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's contemporaries at that time, he actually referred to Bhaktivinoda Thakur as the seventh Goswami. So that title or that wonderful description stuck because the Goswamis, Nana Shastra Vicharane, they were instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to excavate the pastime places of Krishna, as well as re-establish the lost scriptures or compose them. And having been lost, the Goswamis then set about capturing the essence of all of the scriptures. And the bhakti literatures came about through their efforts. So they were more on the Bhajanandi platform, although they preached to the kings, and you can see many pastime places of Krishna have been excavated by the efforts of those kings when the Goswamis preached to them, told them, establish this, establish that. So they did that in Vrindavan. So they were the Goswamis. Their prime duty was to re-establish the lost scriptures. So similarly, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a prolific writer, wrote more than 100 books and a large compilation of poems. He was such a wonderful poet. And when you read his poetry, it's absolutely amazing. His command of the language, the metaphors and the messages in them, mind-blowing. So let's see, reading the preface of this book, and then just here and there we'll pick on some aspects, because as usual we just have till 8:30 or so. Oh, no breakfast today. But we'll stop at 8:30. So, books written about the pure devotees and by the pure devotees also scripture. So we can say, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The preface. The efforts of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to re-establish the pure form of Gaudiya Vaishnavism can be better appreciated if something is said about the prevailing and generally opposing currents of thought espoused by the ruling British, the Indian intellectuals of the time, and the common people of the 19th century India. So, three parts, three contexts. So, we could understand the prevailing context if we consider the ruling British, the Indian intellectuals of the time, and the common people of the time. So, here we see or we read that it's about the generally opposing currents of thought. So immediately it's being established that there was some type of antagonism towards the Vedic understanding and scriptures at the time. The British, with some notable exceptions amongst their scholars such as H. Wilson and Sir William Jones, viewed any native endeavor to uncover and extol the glories of their great heritage as undesirable and foolish at best. So we had some sympathetic scholars like Wilson and William Jones. They were discriminatory, but not as much as the others. So British scholars at that time, they established a branch of academia called Indology. Indology. So ology means a study of India, the study of India, Indology. And their motive was to try and extricate the meanings of these deep scriptures, but at the same time, they had an agenda to penetrate that with their own meaning, so that they also discount the original meanings and the greatness of those scriptures. They try to understand it using more of their colonial framework. Already they entered into that academic study with the idea that this is all inferior. So they looked at it in that way. So what do? These scholars, they viewed any native endeavor, they viewed any local endeavor to uncover the heritage of the scriptures as undesirable. And any endeavor to glorify, to extol the glories, they also viewed that as foolish. So immediately the British had this idea. At worst, more than just that, at worst, they piled abuse and invective and insult on the Vedic thought and scriptures in ill-conceived and misinformed attacks. So whatever they wrote, the British, they wrote, whatever they spoke, they were very discriminatory in what they did. And they were misinformed also because they did not have the depth of understanding. In 1838, which is now very significant because it's the appearance of Bhaktivinoda Thakur in that 1838 to 1914. That was his duration of his life. So in 1838, the year of Thakur Bhaktivinoda's birth, there was some debate on India's Supreme Ruling Council, chaired by Lord Bentinck, as to the value of teaching Sanskrit and India's classical literatures, as well as regional languages. So what was the motive? They said that they want to establish British schools for the education of the Indian people. A few members of the council were mildly in favor of it, but they elegantly expressed, which is like a little bit of sarcasm here, fully ethnocentric and Philistine view of Thomas Macaulay. This Thomas Macaulay is a famous leader as well as a scholar, and his words are quite often quoted. This was his view. In a book, in his minutes called Education Minutes, he wrote that he could not find one Orientalist who could deny that a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole narrative literature of India and Arabia. So he is saying one shelf of English books is worth more than all the books of India and Arabia, because they were also colonizing the Arabian Peninsula that way, Middle East and so on. That's how all of these very so-called romantic literatures, stories came about, of Arabian Nights and what is this famous guy who's Sinbad and all of that. Those very type of romantic novels. The British were very good at what they called, in academic terms, othering. So what they would do, they would use their own framework to judge the cultures of other cultures. And therefore they're very denigrative, very, very discriminatory. He went on, this Macaulay went on to make the outrageous assertion that all the historical information which has been collected from all the books written in the Sanskrit language is less valuable than what may be found in the most paltry abridgments used at the preparatory schools in England. And that is in quotations. So you can see, very discriminatory. And this is how he discriminated. The question before us, he says, is whether it's in our power to teach, when we teach the English language, whether we can patronize sound philosophy and true history. We shall have the countenance at the public expense medical doctrines which would disgrace an English farrier. In other words, he's insulting Ayurveda. Astronomy, which would move laughter in girls at an English boarding school. So he's criticizing the Vedic cosmology, and he's saying it's laughable, and girls at an English boarding school would laugh at it. And history, should we teach history abounding with kings 30 feet high and reigning for 30,000 years long? This is what the Vedic teachings say, that we had kings, gigantic kings. I mean, Arjuna, Krishna were regarded to be, tall, and before them even taller kings. And their reigns 30,000 years long, etc. And should we teach geography made up of seas of trickle and rivers of butter? Shvetadvip, ocean of milk. So, criticizing that. So I was reading, somewhere, like we read in the Shastra, the Prabhupada explains as rivers of milk, rivers of butter, rivers of alcohol even, and so on. And I read somewhere on one feed, scientists discover ocean of alcohol in space. Not that you're going to go there and dip your cup and have one on me, mate. No, but like, methane and all of these things are floating in space. So yeah, So scientists are finding things that are already there. And we can see there's many things that are established in the Vedic scriptures are coming to light now. So we can either, follow the path of, what we'd say, descending path of knowledge by the great acharyas, or you can try the ascending path, which is scientists do and impersonalists do and jnanis do, by the dint of their own knowledge, try to find the truth. And that takes lifetimes after lifetimes. It's easy. Prabhupada made it easy for us, gave us the descending process. So the author of the preface says, this sort of extreme religious and cultural chauvinism was not rare. In fact, it prevailed at that time. The historian James Mill, he denigrated the Vedic scriptures and deities with phrases like, quote, grossest images of sensual pleasure, the worship of emblems of generative organs, etc. So you see in the temples, sculptures are made of the demigods in different poses of sensual, so-called sensual enjoyment. We have Lord Shiva's yoni, Shivalingam, so which is actually representing the first progenitive act in the universe. So the generating chamber, the halo is described in Brahma Samhita. So they denigrate all of that. So you can see how discriminatory the context was. Then at the same time, the education system of the British was so impactful, because that's what colonials do when they go to a country. They take over the education system, the legal system, and implement their own language. And create their own institutions. And that is the way they will perpetuate their own ideologies through that system. In fact, we are all vestiges of that system. While colonialism has withdrawn, coloniality still exists. And they have left in their wake great agents who continue to perpetuate those values. And unfortunately, we have been some of them, because we have come through that kind of British type of education system. So Eurocentric, Americocentric education has impacted our thinking and therefore shaped our minds in particular ways of seeing things. Srila Prabhupada came to give us that knowledge which we need to consider to deeply excavate all of those misgivings that are there in the heart. We have to throw out so many things. Therefore, we still try to understand all of this spiritual knowledge by using our so-called educational framework that we have. And therefore, we can't understand things like there's no sense of time as we know it in the spiritual world. Therefore, we ask a question like, when did God come about? It's achintya. No, it can't be inconceivable. We must be able to explain it. But it's achintya, it's inconceivable. We have to step out of those. So within that period then, the British were also impacted. They also impacted the Indians. And a vast amount of Indian intellectuals came about who tried to bridge the British English education, which is coupled with Christianity, they looked for some way in which they could align both their original culture with this. And what happened was then they diluted the scriptures and tried to present certain ideas and tried to explain it away in logical terms, which still happens today. For example, now we're entering soon in a period of worship in which many South Indians will engage with what is called Pardasi. And in that period is the worship of Lord Krishna, in his name as Perumal. But then the explanations given is that, it's a period of fasting because it's a harvest period and all. So some kind of scientific, educated idea is being given to explain that, which was emanating from this kind of so-called alignment between Indians trying to intellectualize their scriptures in a context of where they've been impacted by British education, so that they will remain also acceptable as scholars. The degree to which they'll be considered educated is the degree to which they imbibed the English intellectualization. So if you did not follow and show that level of education, you were not considered educated. You were just one of the common native folk, uneducated, illiterate. Right? So we also, even now, we have that. We present ourselves as educated and highly qualified if we achieve within a system, an arbitrary system of education that has been created by the powers that existed in our historical past. I, for example, would not be able to have any credibility within an academic environment to speak there to all those so-called intellectuals if I didn't wave some kind of accreditation. You keep waving it, it'll blow away in the wind and nothing's left. So they will listen to you. But if you come as some, you can't even enter that space. You may be an ordinary worker in the building, but you may have a great realization. But then, what is he? So we kind of created this kind of situation. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he entered into that kind of environment. And the intellectuals also, they created within that period, there was another group called the Brahmo Samaj. And these were also Indian intellectuals, but mostly impersonalists. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur entered, and when he, his history is well known, so we won't focus on that so much, about him being appointed in the British Raj as a deputy magistrate, the highest position that any Indian can. Because he was also intellectual, he grew up, at 2 years old he began reciting poetry. At 6 years old he knew Ramayana and Mahabharata. 9 years old he was an astronomer. So, right? So this is his intellectual pedigree. And of course, it's because of his spiritual acumen that he came with all of that. So we won't focus so much on that, because I actually want to look at maybe one or two of his poems also, because it's so beautiful. So we understand that he entered within this period, and then, when he retired and began to re-establish, he's to be understood that he is credited with re-establishing the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that had been lost, and also had been regarded with some kind of disrepute amongst the locals, because at that time, besides the Indian intellectuals, the British and the Brahmo Samaj, there were also deviant Apa Sampradayas. Aul, Baul, Ati Bahari, so many of these, Saki Bheki, all of these different sects were there, and they were misrepresenting grossly Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. So the whole teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had fallen into disrepute. Nobody wanted to do any Indian worth their so-called salt and who didn't want to have anything to do with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. So as we understand, Krishna detects when the purity of his teachings becomes sullied, becomes lost. So he personally comes, or he sends his pure devotee. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we know from his own writings that he is a Manjari. Kamala Manjari, I think he's regarded as. And he refers to his own position. He writes some beautiful poetry about his service to Radha and Krishna and his position. He's actually witnessing, so his position. So he establishes that, and we know he's a pure devotee. Krishna sends him. So Krishna sent him to re-establish the foundational ideas, re-establish Krishna consciousness with the view that other great devotees will be coming in his line to bring to the fore the original teaching, step by step by step. So followed by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and then Srila Prabhupada in that line. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had to re-establish. So he tried to find a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And can you believe it, just 400 years later, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there wasn't a copy to be found. It had become lost. Because remember, at that time, it was also scripted by hand and handwritten copies. So eventually, given that he was an established magistrate, he had the authority and power, as well as he was a pure devotee, so he had the Krishna Shakti. He found a copy in Orissa, handwritten copy, and then he took that and then he started to have them printed, and he had his commentary on that. Amrita Prabha Bhashya. So Bhashya means commentary. Amrita Prabha, the nectar, the flow of nectar. Amrit, flow of nectar. Commentary on the flow of nectar of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. So he began to comment on that, and he is re-established. And then he started to do the Harinam. He started Namahata, is a credit to him. And he regards himself as the sweeper, the lowly sweeper of the Namahata. So he would personally go door to door begging and preaching and begging and preaching personally. And people would be impacted by this. This is a great magistrate, but look at him, how humble he is. So they began to gravitate towards his teachings, and in that way he established, I think, the Vaishnav Sangha Sabha. And with his efforts, he began to actually attract a following of the intellectual class of people. He re-established the bona fide and the purity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. And in that way, the reputation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings was re-established. And people began to see the actual depth and the scriptural purity of these teachings. So throughout this book, you'll find that, if you get a copy, I don't know whether we should order more, maybe. I'm not sure if it's in print. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he then began to really establish the teachings of the Goswamis, the teachings that had been lost, teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and therefore he wrote more than 100 volumes of books. As I was saying, his contemporary called Shishir Kumar Ghosh, who also lived from 1840 to 1911, almost the same period. He said, he wrote a letter to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I have not seen the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, but I consider you to be the 7th Goswami. So, that's very beautiful. I mean, even the writings amongst them are so deep, and they are full of this love, and it's amazing. It's a culture that Prabhupada has given us to re-establish. So the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the biography is there, how, grew up, his encounters with his teachers, even when he was a student at a college. Vidyasagar was his teacher who wrote something. He was also a scholar, so they all write, but he was influenced by that Brahma Samaj culture, and he wrote in his book, Impersonal Philosophy. So as a student, Bhaktivinoda Thakur went to his teacher and asked him, why are you denying this? How can you not describe the form? But the culture of scholarship at that time was also humble. And Vidyasagar was a simple, humble teacher. And he said, I admit my ignorance in this aspect. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teachings. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, some of his books and poems, the collections of them are some of these. Rasa Sanketa, which means indications of rasa. Gita Mala, which we hear about, a garland of songs. Kalyana Kalpataru, that we know, we hear about that. I think Gumaj also used to cite and quote. The desire tree of auspiciousness. Sharanagati, we know. Right? Surrendered to the Lord's shelter. A whole lot of poems came out of their songs. Jai Radha Madhava is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's. Gaura Arti, Jaya Jaya Gaura Chand. There is there. And he compiled Sri Godrum Chandra Bhajana Padhesh. Then the poems of Bhaktivinoda Thakur also. So in the last few minutes that we have, let's see if we can look at some of the poems. In fact, the poems are there on the internet. If you go to KK Songs, the complete list of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's. ISKCON Desire Tree, the complete list of his books. Everything is there in PDF form. So the songs of the Vaishnava Acharyas have become popular. This one here, Amara Jivan. This is a Amara Jivan Sadapa Perato Nahiko Punya Rileshi. Right? You know that? Okay, that collection was made popular by Bhakticharya Swami Maharaj in his Songs of the Vaishnava Acharyas. So I'll just read that, one or two verses, and then look at the translation and look at some others too, right? Parere udvega dhyache je koto dhyache je vere klesha. It's in Bengali. Translation. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, I am an impious sinner and have caused others great anxiety and trouble. I have never hesitated to perform sinful acts for my own enjoyment. Devoid of all compassion, concerned only with my own selfish interests, I am remorseful, seeing others happy. I am a perpetual liar, and the misery of others is a source of great pleasure for me. So we can identify, because this is the common man, this is those who are not practicing devotional service, and those of us who are also attempting to practice. We have these anarthas, and it's still there, Ruined by laziness and sleep, I resist all pious deeds, yet I am very active and enthusiastic to perform wicked acts. For worldly fame and reputation, I engage in the practice of deceitfulness. Thus I am destroyed by my own greed and always lustful. Now in old age, deprived of all means of success, humbled and poor, Bhaktivinoda submits his tale of grief at the feet of the Supreme Lord. I encourage devotees to read the poem, really. So at that time, the baul, I mentioned the Upper Sampradayas, Aul, Baul. So there's a sect called the Baul. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was so affected by that, and also so wanting to correct that he wrote a compilation of poems also called Baul, Bolche Shabhe. And then this one poem, these poems are written actually to rectify the deceptive presentations by such people. So he wrote, Baul actually means the original meanings of it means a devotee, a pure devotee of God, gone mad in genuine ecstasy of love of God. So the Bauls, the Upper Sampradaya, were pretending to do that. So he said, just in Sanskrit, and I'll read it in Bengali. Baul Baul bolche shabhe hoche Baul kona jana dadi chuda dekhe o bhai koche jiva ke vanchana. Everyone keeps using the word Baul as a cheap label. But who has actually become a Baul? A pure devotee gone mad with love of God. But merely exhibiting a long beard and a top knot upon your head, O brothers, you thus cheat many people. Your philosophy of Deha Tadva Veda Tadva, this philosophy, wrongful philosophy, they were saying the material body is supposedly divine. Therefore you can use it in so-called divine acts. Your philosophy of Deha Tadva is simply a philosophy of dull matter. By maintaining such a doctrine, is it possible to become freed from the womb of Maya? The supreme goal of life is the attainment of eternally conscious bliss, Chidananda. Although you understand this well, you will still be unable to enter transcendence. Oh, if you really want to become a genuine Baul, then please proceed on the path of religiosity. Oh, just abandon in all ways the mind's craving for inappropriate company of women. Oh, my dear brothers, completely giving up your clever manipulative speech, just fill your mouths with the chanting of Hare Krishna. So that is also, and I think let us end with one of the poems of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This poem is called Brindavan, written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and translated by one of the Gaudiya Math followers, Swami B.V. Giri. I don't know what the B.V. stands for. Coming in that line, then, written, not Gaudiya Vaishnav, sorry, prior to Gaudiya Vaishnav, written by Swami Giri. In Jagannath Puri in 1871 he translated it. So I'll just read one verse and then some of the translations. Nitya Dhama Vrindavan Yata Mora Krishna Dhan Nitya Kala Karena Vilash Chidanand Maya Lata Prema Kishala Yata Jnanananda Maya Kunjavash. My treasure, Shri Krishna, Bhaktivinoda is saying, my treasure, Krishna, always sports in the eternal abode of Vrindavan. He resides in its forest bowers that are full of divine knowledge, that are decorated with spiritual creepers and buds of love divine. The purest type of worship is exhibited on the banks of the Kalindi and is eternally found in the hearts of devotees there. The topmost bhava acquired by the jivas is manifest at Govardhan, where animals such as cows reside. That realm is full of the rasas of servitude, friendship, parental affection, and amorous love. Indeed, Vrajadham is the home of divine love. There the jivas do not experience birth, death, endurance, or disease. They take shelter of the nectar of prem. That land which is most dear to Krishna is beyond matter and all mundane sense perception. It eternally transcends time and space. One who has a material body and whose mind is attached to matter can never reach it. So there are several verses here, and in the verses you can see that the philosophy and the ultimate destination and the ultimate practice is all being given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So one can learn these songs. In fact, I was talking to some devotee recently that we should try. And by learning the songs and singing it, you can actually give an entire class based on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanations and so on. So we'll stop there. Any questions or comments, please add. What do you think, Rukmini? Give Rukmini the mic. I think you can do some wonderful scripts and plays from these.
Just two thoughts, Smita Prabhu. First one is that poetry that you read, Jiva,
Amara Jiva?
Amara Jiva. It's so intense, but it has such a sweet melody. And I'm just like, this melody is so sweet, and then you're saying such heavy things. Like, it's like, the juxtaposition was interesting. And the other point that I was just thinking is that it's interesting that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is like Kamala Manjari. We separate the world so much, Krishna's world and our world. But this Kamala Manjari came down to deal with British officials.
Yes.
And like just the whole thing that Krishna allows his devotees himself to really enter our world, in ways that like we think to be so mundane.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I thought that was
so always, Gaur Govinda Swami was also speaking, and he says that we have to understand the position as Nitya Siddha, just like Srila Prabhupada. We may try to explain Shakti Avesh Avatar and all of that. And, well, externally we may call him that category, Prabhupada, but they are associates, pure associates of the Lord. And then they are commissioned by the Lord to come here. And imagine they accept that service also to come. It's mind-blowing.
Just the idea that like a Kamala Manjari wants to come down.
Is it on?
Yeah, sorry. Just the idea that Kamala Manjari will come down and liaise in a court.
Yeah.
Just like Krishna's allowing them so close to us. That's what I'm...
Yeah. Imagine that, that we have... Within a short space of time, 400 years, it's like we've had the association of these great devotees. And what for me is that as you read this and as you try to understand it, and for whatever little realization, you can see Krishna's hand, how he is re-establishing everything. There's no coincidence. It's re-established. Bhaktivinoda Thakur came, right? He set the foundation again. Everything's building up on it. And therefore we should have faith. What I sometimes think about, and maybe sometimes it produces a little anxiety, is that I see in the world how particular persons are advocating violence and disturbance and so on the basis of religious teachings, and trying to overthrow other existing religions, and even to the extent of saying that everybody should be killed if they do not follow. It's out there, it's happening. And of course there's pushback from other communities about these things and so on. And then you think, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to our teachings? All the devotees, they're going to be killed. Our books going to be burnt. Again, so many libraries of scriptures were burnt by the Mughals and so many invaders of India and so on. Tons of scriptures. What's going to happen? Is it going to happen now? But we see, just as at that time, the Industrial Revolution also happened simultaneously when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. Actually, everything was under his control. It all happened to perpetuate this knowledge to a world that would become more and more materialistic. So we have to have faith that, yes, although it looks so bad, but the prediction is 10,000 years. And this will happen. It may mean that devotees of the Lord will have to sacrifice so many things, even their lives, as situations become worse. But the 10,000 year golden age will be established because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that, gave that assurance. So, and we see that these acharyas are establishing that. And in the digital space now, you can't remove the scriptures that are there. So even if our books are burnt and devotees are killed, it's there. Right? So now more and more as space travel is happening and India is becoming a dominant force, what did the Americans do? They took all the knowledge that we had, all our material knowledge, and digitized it and put it into some kind of encryption and in a space capsule and sent it out to space. It's floating there somewhere. So even if our civilization in the future is all annihilated, somebody in the future, discoverer, will find that. Just like finding a bottle with a message floating in the ocean to the shore. And somebody sees, oh, this is from the 1800s. Fell off a pirate ship. Let's see. Oh, it's in Gaelic. I have to go and get an interpreter. So, but just like that, there's this. So now India, we can advocate. ISKCON can say, all Prabhupada's books, digitized, encrypted, put it on something. Next trip, send it out there. Because we're already an interplanetary movement, right? So it's okay. We'll stop there. Thank you so much. Thanks for your comment. Hare Krishna. May the blessings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur be with us today so that we can follow these wonderful instructions. Hare Krishna. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.